Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into an emotion that, well, it can feel overwhelming, even consuming sometimes.
Mm.
But the material you've sent us reveals there's actually a very clear path to how it builds up and, thankfully, how we can manage it.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about wrath.
That's right.
Our mission, as always, is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from your sources, basically offering you a shortcut to being really well-informed on this pretty intense topic.
Indeed. And we'll explore exactly what wrath is, how it can subtly escalate from, seemingly small triggers.
Right.
We'll look at its profound ripple effects, both in contemporary life and in older contexts, too. And crucially, practical ways to navigate and maybe overcome it.
Okay.
Get ready to maybe connect some surprising dots here.
So let's unpack this then. We all experience anger, sometimes daily.
Mm-hmm.
But what exactly is wrath? How does it really differ from just being angry? Because they do get mixed up a lot, don't they?
They absolutely do. Our research clarifies that wrath is, well, it's more than just standard anger. It's described as an intense, unchecked emotion.
Unchecked. Okay.
Yeah, like anger without restraint, compassion, or justice. It often seeks vengeance or harm.
So it has an intent behind it that's different.
Exactly. While anger, can be a natural response to injustice, wrath tends to be destructive, self-centered, and often, frankly, disproportionate. It's the kind of anger that, as one source put it, festers in the heart, eroding relationships and spiritual well-being. It either turns inwards to poison you or outwards to destroy.
That distinction is really crucial. So it's not the initial spark, the flash of anger, but what you let that spark become.
Precisely.
So how does this potentially destructive emotion actually build up in our lives? I mean, it rarely just appears fully formed, right?
No, it really does. And our sources show wrath often begins with minor, often unaddressed triggers, things that sort of snowball into destructive patterns. What's fascinating, I think, is how these triggers often fall into three categories we might overlook.
Right.
First, there are the small actions. These are like the initial sparks.
Okay, like what?
Well, think about that quick snapping at others over minor issues. Raising your voice at a family member for something trivial, or maybe a sharp, berating comment to a coworker for a small mistake.
Yeah, I can picture that.
It also includes things like holding grudges or, venting online, especially on platforms like X, where personal frustrations can escalate into these public conflicts really fast.
Right.
We also see it in sarcastic or cutting remarks, maybe using contemptuous silence as a way to punish someone, or just generally overreacting to things that seem like slight offenses. These are active, small choices.
Okay, so those are the actions. What's next?
Then there are the inactions. These are maybe even more insidious because they're like the silent fuel.
Silent fuel. How so?
It's things like failing to forgive, just letting resentment simmer instead of trying to extend grace, or avoiding conflict resolution, letting issues just fester.
Sweeping it under the rug.
Exactly. Or maybe suppressing emotions instead of processing them in a healthy way. Even not setting clear boundaries can lead to an eventual explosion down the line.
Right.
And simply neglecting rest or stress management, that can make anyone more irritable and prone to an angry outburst, can't it?
Definitely. So actions, inactions.
Yeah.
What's the third category?
The third is unknowing or habitual behaviors. These are patterns that become really deeply ingrained, almost automatic.
Okay.
We're talking about habitual irritability, like maybe snapping at your kids daily without fully realizing the cumulative damage it's doing. It includes passive-aggressive tendencies or, the silent treatment, those snide comments.
Yes, those are hard to deal with.
Or nursing anger, constantly replaying scenarios in your mind, finding ways to justify your rage. Chronic complaining fits here too. And interestingly, our sources also mention absorbing cultural anger. Like, from really polarized online content, it sort of normalizes hostility and makes us think that kind of interaction is okay or even normal.
That's a really interesting point about absorbing it from the culture. Okay, so what's truly striking here is how these subtle buildups, these small actions, these inactions, these habits, they don't stay subtle, do they?
No, they don't.
How do they actually play out in our, fast-paced modern lives, especially with social pressures and digital platforms amplifying everything?
Yeah, the material you shared provides some really powerful, quite vivid real-world illustrations.
Okay, let's hear them.
Well, imagine Lisa. She's a 40-year-old teacher. She experiences road rage, gets cut off, lays on the horn, starts shouting, and it escalates into a full-blown confrontation.
Wow.
She gets to school, shaken, late, and that anger it permeates her classroom demeanor for the rest of the day. That small irritation spiraled.
Yeah, you can see the chain reaction.
Then there's James. He's younger, 25, a graphic designer. He gets drawn into these really heated arguments on social media, say, over politics.
Mm-hmm.
His angry replies quickly turn into personal attacks. He ends up alienating friends, tarnishing his online reputation. It even starts impacting his freelance work.
So real consequences there.
Absolutely. That absorbed cultural anger becomes very personal, very costly. Or think about Maria, a single mother. After a really stressful day, she snaps at her kids.
Okay.
But it's not just a one-off. It becomes this habitual irritability that strains her relationship with them, leading to this cycle of guilt and emotional distance.
That's tough.
In a professional setting, we see David, a department head. Under deadline pressure, he just lashes out at his team, harshly criticizing their work.
Oh, dear.
His unchecked wrath creates a toxic workplace. It leads to high turnover and eventually his own demotion.
So it backfires on him, too.
It does. We even have another Lisa example. This time, she's offended by a coworker's critique. But instead of addressing it, she just becomes cold, distant. That contemptuous silence we mentioned.
The inaction again?
Exactly. And her unresolved anger spreads. It turns into gossip, even sabotage, creating deep divisions in the workplace. Yeah. And there's the stressed father who yells harshly at his kids over something small, like spilled juice. That overreaction makes the children fearful, distant. He loses moral authority.
Yeah.
Finally, even in a community setting, like a church, a minor misunderstanding escalates into a feud. People take sides, resentment builds, and it can lead to a church split, damaging the community's testimony.
Wow, those examples, they really do hit home because they feel so real, so familiar. What stands out most to you here in terms of how wrath just sort of infiltrates our daily lives, often without us even fully realizing the path we're on?
Well, what's truly fascinating, I think, is how wrath often isn't just that sudden explosion we imagine. It's more like this creeping poison. It starts small, right? In those seemingly isolated incidents, or maybe in the quiet corners of our minds, nurtured by those inactions, those habits.
Yeah.
But then eventually it erupts. And when it does, it's profoundly damaging, not just to us, but to everyone and everything around us, our families, our workplaces, our communities. It really highlights how connected our inner state is to our external world.
That's a really powerful point.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we've seen the modern fallout. But what does, let's say, timeless wisdom tell us about this emotion? Our sources delve pretty deeply into ancient contexts, particularly biblical ones, and they consistently seem to condemn wrath. Why is that? What are the universal principles here?
Yeah, that's a great question. The core message across these ancient writings seems to be that unrighteous anger distorts justice, poisons relationships, and blinds spiritual clarity.
Okay.
Now, anger itself isn't always seen as sinful. You can think of righteous indignation at injustice, for example.
Right, like being angry about something wrong.
Exactly, but unchecked anger is consistently portrayed as destructive. It's seen as potentially opening the door to, well, further negative influences and really destroying inner peace.
Yeah.
Our sources draw heavily from this wisdom. For instance, there's a passage in Ephesians that warns, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil."
Okay, so deal with it quickly.
That's the clear message. Address anger constructively and quickly before it festers into wrath. Manage it.
Got it.
We see the devastating outcomes really clearly in stories like Cain and Abel from Genesis. Cain's anger, fueled by jealousy, leads directly to murder. It's a stark reminder that unchecked anger leads to devastating outcomes, even after God specifically warned him to master that sin.
Wow.
Proverbs offers very practical wisdom, too, stating, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger."
The de-escalation tactic.
Precisely. It highlights the profound power of gentle responses. And then James reminds us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. It's a direct teaching that human wrath undermines a greater, more righteous purpose. These texts, and others like them, consistently underscore that anger tips into sin when it seeks revenge, when it lacks control, or when it disregards justice.
This brings up a really important question, especially for those of us who might think, well, isn't anger just bad? Is all anger sinful?
Yeah.
How do we actually differentiate between that righteous anger you mentioned and this destructive wrath?
No, absolutely not. Not all anger is sinful. Our sources are quite clear on this distinction. Righteous anger is described as being aligned with a higher purpose, maybe God's heart, depending on the source. It defends the oppressed, it condemns injustice, and it acts without personal malice or self-interest.
Okay.
Think of historical figures, maybe spiritual leaders, who expressed anger at blatant wrongdoing. It aims to be constructive. In contrast, sinful wrath is seen as rooted in pride, ego, and the desire to control or punish. It becomes sinful when it's uncontrolled, when it lingers, when it seeks personal vengeance, or when it's purely self-centered. It's destructive, not constructive.
That distinction is so helpful. Okay, so if wrath isn't addressed, what are the broader implications then? Beyond just the immediate outburst, what are the sort of far-reaching consequences when this destructive emotion isn't managed?
Yeah, the effects of wrath are indeed described as far-reaching. They impact nearly every aspect of our well-being and, of course, the lives of those around us.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, there's profound relational damage. Wrath clearly alienates friends, family, or colleagues.
Mm,
The sources cite broken friendships or strained marriages, families literally torn apart, even larger groups like churches and teams fracture because of bitterness that started small.
wow.
Then there's the significant emotional toll. Chronic anger often leads to stress, anxiety, or depression. It can trap individuals in this cycle of negativity and guilt.
Yeah, I can see that.
It creates these mental loops where people just relive arguments over and over, fueling more anger and preventing any kind of healing.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. We also see clear professional setbacks. Angry behavior in the workplace, yelling at colleagues, that kind of thing can lead to lost promotions, terminations, or a permanently damaged reputation.
Right.
A leader who's generally respected can completely lose credibility due to one angry outburst. And those social media rants we talked about, they can absolutely result in job loss or serious public backlash.
Okay, so career impact too. What else?
Well, on a physical level, there are serious physical health consequences. Prolonged anger literally raises blood pressure, increases stress hormones, and contributes to heart disease or insomnia. It takes a physical toll on your body.
That's quite alarming.
It is. And finally, there's often a deep spiritual disconnect. Wrath fosters bitterness and unforgiveness, which our sources describe as hindering prayer and communion with whatever higher power or sense of peace one connects with.
Mm.
It's seen as isolating you, hardening the heart to grace and peace.
This information is really powerful, but I imagine for some listeners it could also feel a bit heavy. Like, okay, this problem is huge, it's pervasive.
Yeah.
So the big question becomes, how do we actually manage anger in daily life? And maybe even more importantly, how can we tell if our own anger is crossing that line into wrath?
Excellent questions. And thankfully, our sources do offer clear, actionable guidance on this. To discern if your anger is maybe slipping into wrath, you could ask yourself a few things.
Okay.
Like, is my anger proportionate to the situation? Is it way over the top? Does it lead towards harm or could it lead towards reconciliation? And am I holding on to it instead of genuinely trying to resolve it?
Those are good diagnostic questions.
Yeah. Persistent destructive anger. That seems more about hurting than healing. That's very likely moving into wrathful territory.
Okay. So what about the practical steps then? To combat it, to diffuse it?
Right. There are several practical steps recommended. One of the first and maybe most powerful is simply to pause and pray or pause and reflect, depending on your orientation.
Okay, just stop.
Exactly. When anger flares, take a moment to breathe and seek calm. It's about creating that crucial space before reacting.
Right.
Then, actively seek reconciliation. Address conflicts directly and forgive quickly, that Ephesians idea, again, to prevent resentment from growing. This is about being proactive in healing breaches, not letting things fester.
Makes sense.
It's also vital to manage triggers. Identify your personal anger triggers. Maybe it's stress, fatigue, certain people, certain situations, and address them. That might mean more self-care, like exercise, getting enough rest, or maybe even seeking counseling if needed.
So knowing yourself is key.
Absolutely. And in our very interconnected world, limit online conflict. Maybe avoid engaging in heated online debates or consciously mute polarizing accounts. Reducing exposure to anger-provoking content is a simple but really effective boundary.
That's a very practical one for today.
It is. And finally, practice gentle responses. Remember that wisdom from Proverbs. Responding to conflicts with kindness is actually a surprisingly effective way to de-escalate tension. It often disarms the other person, as well as calming yourself.
These steps are so actionable. Let's just dig into delay the reaction a bit more, because that sounds simple but can be hard in the moment.
It can be very hard.
For someone who feels that immediate surge of heat, that intense urge to just respond right now, what's a concrete, immediate first step they can take that truly makes a difference?
That's a great point because that immediate surge is so common, isn't it? Our sources really emphasize just creating any kind of gap, even a tiny one.
Okay, like what?
It could be literally physically removing yourself from the situation for just a minute, or taking 3 slow, deep breaths, even just silently counting to 10.
Hmm.
The goal isn't necessarily to suppress the feeling entirely, but to interrupt that automatic response cycle. Just break the circuit for a second.
Oh, I see.
This brief delay gives your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, a chance to catch up and engage. It allows you to choose a response rather than simply reacting on impulse. It's really about building that tiny micro habit of restraint.
That makes so much sense. Just that little space gives you back control.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of those take-home truths from our sources. They really distill so much of this. Anger is a signal, not a solution.
That's good.
Unresolved anger is poison. Forgiveness is freedom. And maybe the most humbling one, you can be right, but still wrong in how you handle it.
Yeah, those are powerful summaries. Our deep dive today consistently reveals that wrath is a destructive force. It often begins with those small, unchecked actions we talked about, snapping, holding grudges, and then it grows into a pattern of hostility that damages relationships, impacts health, and creates a spiritual disconnect. Whether you look at ancient wisdom or modern examples, it seems to reflect a heart that's rejecting love, forgiveness, and peace. The overarching message from all this material seems clear. Wrath, when unchecked, becomes this destructive power that separates us from God, from others, and even from ourselves.
Indeed. So, by recognizing wrath's subtle buildup, really understanding its insidious nature, and then consciously aligning our actions with principles like patience, forgiveness, humility, the goal isn't necessarily to deny anger exists, it's a real emotion, but maybe, as the sources suggest, to redeem it through better, more godly, or simply more constructive responses. It's about transforming it.
Well said.
Transforming it.
So considering how subtly wrath builds, often through those seemingly minor small actions or inactions, how might understanding your personal triggers and patterns be the very first, most crucial key to cultivating more peace? Not just in your own life, but maybe rippling out into your communities too. That's definitely something I'm all over.